Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next session on investing in Saudi Arabia and insights from investors. Today we explore the vast opportunities of Saudi Arabia, our partner country at the World Opportunities Forum. With 3.2 trillion in investment opportunities by 2030, Saudi Arabia is transforming through Vision 2030. Key sectors include renewable energy, targeting 50% of power generation, infrastructure with $100 billion in investments, tourism aiming for 100 million visitors, healthcare with $10 billion in investments, and advanced manufacturing targeting 25% of GDP. Our expert panel will guide you through these opportunities, sharing success stories and insights, moderated by Mr. Feroz Siddiqui, investment promotion specialist for the Middle East, who has had an illustrious career in the Kingdom and in the Gulf. Through the panel's deep expertise in Saudi Arabia and the region, let's discover the vast possibilities of this partnership and unlock the potential of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. We would like to call on Mr. Atul Temurnikar, Chairman and co-founder of Global Schools Group. Mr. Atul is the founding chairman of Global Schools Foundation, GSF, a Singapore-based not-for-profit community foundation that currently operates 64 international campuses across the Far East, Southeast Asia, India, and the Middle East, through a presence in 11 countries to provide high-quality international education for primary to high schools. He will be sharing more about expanding into Saudi Arabia and investment opportunities in the education sector in Saudi Arabia. Next, we would like to call on Mr. Omar Shahzad, Group CEO of Meinhardt Group. He closely oversees the performance of the global group of over 4,500 employees across more than 50 offices, focusing on client management, group business expansion, and diversification. Under his leadership, the group has grown significantly and was amongst the first foreign companies to be granted a full foreign entity license in Saudi Arabia. We invite Mr. Omar to share more about his insights in expanding into Saudi Arabia and investment opportunities in the built environment sector of Saudi Arabia. Now I invite Mr. Feroz Siddiqui to share his experience and views about the growth and opportunities for investments in Saudi Arabia. With a career spanning over 3 decades in the Gulf, Mr. Feroz has been dedicated to strengthening Singapore's ties with the GCC countries, including the establishment of Singapore's inaugural investment promotion offices in Doha and Riyadh. As such, Mr. Feroz has acquired substantial insights into the local business landscape. Let us welcome his wealth of insights to share more about the investment potential in Saudi Arabia.
Good morning, dignitaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today for this panel on Saudi Arabia and to be with the esteemed panelists and my dear friends. Before I start, let me have a show of hands in terms of how many of you here have been to Saudi Arabia for business. Not for Umrah, not for Hajj. Right. So certainly most of you are aware of the opportunities that are coming up in Saudi Arabia, especially because the way the Saudi economy has been transformed in the past few years, as we have seen, is nothing short of remarkable. Yeah. So maybe what I'll do is I'll first start off with a set of slides that I've borrowed from the Invest Saudi site, and then we take the questions and such, yeah? Then followed by Atul and Omar. Excuse me. So whenever you think of Saudi Arabia, you think of development. That is one country that actually has no recollection of the word recession. I lived in Saudi for almost 10 years. I've never heard that word at all. And we've gone through so many recessions during that period itself. One of the greatest things about Saudi Arabia is that the entire government is moving away from oil economy and trying to develop the country on practically every aspect of industries that we've all known around the world. Next slide, please. So a lot of countries actually do planning for the future, and usually it's all about economic growth. Saudi Arabia is actually not just looking at having a thriving economy, but is also looking to see how the vibrant society can be developed. Yeah, maybe this is better. Oh, okay. And also, it has a very ambitious national plan, yeah, in terms of how to develop the country and catapult it to greater heights. So if you look at the national investment strategy, it is based on 4 key pillars that are being developed in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, one of the strong points is to attract foreign investors, remove barriers for funding projects, increase the competitiveness, as well as present the investment opportunities. So what is the Saudi's investment ecosystem, you might ask, right? So a lot of the companies that are actually looking for opportunities in Saudi Arabia would expect to see what are the main reasons for going to Saudi Arabia. So one of the key things that most investors would look for is critical mass. Yeah. So Saudi Arabia actually has the #1 rating in terms of population growth amongst the G20 countries in 2022. And also it has the lowest debt to GDP ratio, which is also very critical for investors to be successful within the kingdom. It's also the fastest growing economy in the G20, and that is incredible. And it also has the lowest inflation. We are all reeling in inflation around the world, but Saudi Arabia is one of the lowest. It ranks second in the G20 in terms of its inflation, which is quite commendable, given the situation that we are all going through globally in terms of inflation. And it also has a robust economy. Yeah, it's the 17th largest economy, and also second in terms of GDP per capita, and foreign assets and FDI as well. So for those of you who are not familiar with the landscape of Saudi Arabia itself, comprises of more than 32 million people, also has a huge expat population, almost 10 million. So imagine 2 times the population of Singapore are just the expatriates who are working in Saudi Arabia. So that's the amount of expats, probably the country with the highest number of expats working in any country. It's very well connected between the east and the west, specifically because of its geographical location. And it is having a lot of connectivities. As you can see, it's got major international airports around the kingdom, as well as ports. So what you may ask are the supports that the government is actually providing. So one of the first things that you will be pleasantly surprised to note is that Saudi Arabia actually has a lot of specific zones, yeah, special economic zones that have been set up in different parts of the kingdom. And each of these zones is specific for different clusters. So there are some that are focused for only IT, like cloud computing, in Riyadh and other places. Also there is KEK, which is the King Abdullah Economic City, which is pioneering a lot of research and development, etc. And you have also other economic diversification sectors that are being presented as opportunities to investors. And as you can see, that there's practically every sector that you would be interested in to participate in the kingdom. So what are the incentives? So the incentives basically depend on the opportunity itself, the industry that you're planning to invest into and do business with. And they can be either cash or capital deployment, sponsor services. And there's also fiscal tax benefits for some industries as well, and some regulatory reforms. So that's a picture of the line. I think most of you are very familiar with that in NEOM. So if you notice, there are just billions and billions of dollars of worth of projects that have been launched since the Vision 2030 started more than 8 years ago. And there doesn't go a quarter where a new project is not announced in Saudi Arabia. And I think most of you are familiar with the NEOM, the Red Sea, and Gidea, but there are just so many more. There's Daraya outside of Riyadh. There's some new ones like Roshan and Soda development as well. And in Medina and Makkah as well, there are some projects that are coming up which are excellent bets for investors to participate. And of course, as most of you know, that Riyadh has been judged as the city for the Expo, World Expo in 2030. So companies that are actually looking at participating in events like the Expo would also find this very interesting to invest into. And finally, for all the information that you need, I think there is this investment called investsaudi.sa. That's the website for you to go to look at the opportunities that are currently available in Saudi Arabia. So I think that's all that I have to present, and I'll pass it to Atul.
Good morning, Excellencies, dignitaries, friends, and very, very old friends of ours who are here today. It's a pleasure to stand between such an esteemed group of people at this World Opportunities Forum. I'm Atul Temurnikar. I'm the chairman and founder of the Global Schools Group, an initiative of the Global Schools Foundation. So we are a Singapore-founded, just behind Plaza Singapura, we founded this organization at Mount Sophia, and today it's educating 45,000 students from more than 70 nationalities. We operate 64 campus schools under the Global Schools Group umbrella, and this is offering multiple curricula, from IB to Cambridge, British, to American, to Indian curriculums as well. Let me get this right. Yep, so there you go. Our connection to Riyadh started very interestingly. 2016, we went down to Riyadh to check out opportunities in Riyadh. We came back clueless. We had no idea what to do, who to speak to. And in 2018, we had the Investment Authority of Saudi actually visit us in Singapore. And they arranged a meeting with Enterprise Singapore and us. And when they came to our Singapore schools, just to get a sense of what we do, they were literally stumped. They said, how do you guys do schools like this? Which is very different concepts. Some of these have been featured on National Geographic Channel. Some of the specifications are now going into global tenders. That's what we have done. But interestingly, in just about early 2022, where we were thick of COVID, no travel, quarantine all the way, we got a call from the Royal Commission of Riyadh City. Very interesting. And we said, well, what do you want us to do? And they said, just come down here. And we said, what is the issue? They said, no, we just want to kind of give you an opportunity to open a school. We've checked with the Ministry of Trade in Singapore and Enterprise Singapore, and they've recommended your organization to open an international school in Riyadh. And so we went down. We got literally a red carpet treatment. We went to see the Royal Commission, CEO, and the colleagues. And they, within a day, they said, we will have to sign the MOU. And incidentally, Minister of Trade, Mr. Tan See Leng, was in Riyadh. So he joined us at the signing ceremony. And I must say that Enterprise Singapore played a very crucial role in our entry in Saudi. This was part of the International Schools Attraction Program by Royal Commission. And we were able to put up a very, very high quality Singapore standards, international standards, international school in Riyadh, which is under the name One World International School, which is one of our Singapore flagship brands. And the school offers American curriculum and also IB curriculum. It's a very interesting combination, and it's very popular there. The Ovis Riyadh basically encapsulates the ethos of global schools, which are built on the pillars of excellence, meritocracy, and core values in education. And our foundation delivers a rigorous quality education backed by international network of schools and international specialists on education, sports, and culture. What we have, the plans for the future. With plenty of opportunities waiting for us, we're looking forward to continuing our legacy spread of good education with a difference. We believe in the philosophy of preparing students to be future ready. We all know 21st century, skills is a big factor, and how do we get that integrated in education, the mainstream education. And we've done that successfully, starting from our schools in Singapore. Using the educational research, which has insightful modern theories of 21st century competencies to deliver our education pedagogies. Assimilating with the society through international education, and this is very important, international education with local culture blended in, which preserves the rich cultural heritage of each of the organizations and each of the countries, and addressing the needs of the community, their aspirations and their requirements, and finally embracing the best practices by implementation of proven strategies. What we do is we have a very promising embassy partnership program. We work with several embassies, not just in Singapore, but in many countries. And the program puts a special focus on Global Schools Foundation to bring the community together and to improve the cultural understanding. Organizing cultural events for communities represented by the embassies. And in Singapore, we've been working with embassies like the Indian Embassy, Indian High Commission, the Japanese Embassy, Korean Embassy, and many others, providing leading edge and modern facilities to the embassies and their communities through sports, activities, and auditoriums and seminars, where many community activities can be conducted. Offering diplomat privileges on subsidized educational costs to the children of the embassy staff and members. In terms of privileges, I think given our very close knit working with the embassies, we can develop the program which can have immense benefits. Our collaboration with communities in Singapore and other places of domicile, which help us build bridges with the local communities in a meaningful way. For example, in Singapore, our GIS campus contributed a portion of the school land, and we have 24 acres of land here, for a small community park, which was inaugurated by Minister Edwin Tong and is now being enjoyed by the community in Siglap. There are many other collaborations that can be thought about, and we welcome all of you to explore these conversations, like accessing our facilities and infrastructure, which are some of the most modern facilities you will ever find in any international school. You can celebrate your national days, your cultural festivals, your literacy festivals, and some of these auditoriums, 4 auditoriums, seminar halls, 600-seater auditoriums to 1,500-seater auditoriums will make plenty of room for your various activities that you would like to conduct for your communities. And we have special nonprofit benefits for all embassies and high commissions. Well, in addition to this, there are state-of-the-art auditoriums which provide ample space and technical facilities for screening of movies, films, shows, performances. And through our Quantum Arena features IMAX theaters, Dolby theaters, special performance theaters, and this has been enjoyed by many of the audiences and the communities. Before this, the embassies can enjoy special benefits like collaboration or events that will improve the cultural understanding between various nations and various communities through this partnership approach. So there is a multi-level engagement that we do through Global Schools Foundation and the embassies and high commissions through various talks and panel discussions that happen throughout the year, which is where we engage the thought leaders and eminent leaders like you to to bring to the students your journeys, your experiences, your rich cultural heritage of your country, and have that engagement done with our students. We've had several leaders from Singapore, from other countries, also visit us, and among them was our very own Singapore's Minister Mentor, late Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Besides this, we have many other spaces, as I mentioned earlier, for conducting several activities such as sports, friendly sports, and other community events. So I would say that not only you should see us at Global Schools Foundation as a community organization or a partner to communities, but also we can provide you the real education that is core at our heart. Thank you so much.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers and Mrs. Namita for giving me the opportunity to come here and address this panel about Saudi Arabia, a country I know reasonably well. I've been going to Saudi Arabia extensively for the last so many years. Before I start my presentation, I'd just like to say at the outset, it's a country, as Feroz mentioned, is in the midst of a great transformation, a socio-economic transformation, a great awakening that's reshaping the Middle East and beyond. You know, at a time when there are fears about a global recession coming up or a hard landing, wars, Saudi Arabia is indeed a bright spot, and one that I think ASEAN and Singapore can capitalize on, given the complementary strengths that we can bring to Saudi Arabia. So with that, I'd like to start my presentation. So before I get into the Vision 2030 proper and my perspective of the Vision 2030, I'd like to start about a lesson in history and the genesis of this vision. So the vision was announced in about 2016 by at that time, the new leadership of Saudi Arabia, King Salman and you know, of course, the Crown Prince. This was done in 2016, and it was in response to, while Saudi Arabia did not have a recession, as Feroz mentioned out, but Saudi Arabia was facing some key macroeconomic challenges. First of all, it was heavily reliant on oil. Oil formed 60% of its GDP, and oil prices had plunged. If you remember, in 2016, oil prices slumped from $100 over to less than half. And if you look at Saudi Arabia's exports at that time, nearly 90% of their exports were related to oil. So obviously that had a big hit on its economy. Unemployment rates were high. Saudi Arabia was ranked as not an easy place to do business in. It was ranked about 94. So foreign direct investment outside of the oil sector was not much. Saudi Arabia is blessed with a very young population. Almost 2/3 of its population is below the age of 30. Women participation in the workforce was very low. So in response to some of these challenges and headwinds came that Vision 2030. Now, the Vision 2030 is a very extensive document, and I don't have, obviously, the time or the flexibility to get into it, but I have highlighted 6 or 7 pillars that I thought were quite relevant for today's audience. Number one, obviously the first aspect of Vision 2030 was to address the dependency on oil. So one of the pillars of this vision is to move the economy away from oil so that non-oil sector becomes 60% of the economy rather than what it has been, which is less than 50%. The second aspect is to attract more private capital and foreign direct investment into the kingdom. So whilst FDI used to average about $10 billion a year, the idea is to push it up to about $100 billion to make Saudi Arabia more attractive and make it easy for foreign companies to invest and participate in the economic opportunities that exist. Unemployment, of course, a key pillar was to bring down the unemployment. As I said, Saudi Arabia is blessed with a young workforce, very well-educated workforce, many of them trained in the best universities overseas, and Saudi universities and higher institutions are also very, very, you know, sort of highly commended and highly rated. Tourism, As Feroz asked, how many people have gone to Saudi Arabia outside of Hajj and Umrah? Saudi Arabia is again blessed with many good tourism sites, and one of the pillars of this Vision 2030 is to increase the number of tourists to about 100 million per annum. Prior to that, it was only about 20 million, and most of it related to religious tourism and so forth. So, and on this marker, Saudi has done incredibly well. If you try and go to Saudi Arabia at most times of the year, getting a hotel in itself is a big achievement. Infrastructure, there's a huge amount of money being spent on upgrading the infrastructure and built environment of Saudi Arabia. Housing is again one big aspect. So, house ownership is one of the key pillars. I think the idea is to bring it up to about 70%. And sustainability, almost all the power in Saudi Arabia was generated through fossil fuels. The idea is to bring it up to 50% by 2030. So very big ambitions for a country of the size of Saudi Arabia. So you have a good plan. What's the progress so far? You've got about 7 or 8 charts here, and you can see that in the span of about less than 10 years, Saudi Arabia has made remarkable progress on every major target and KPIs that they've set for themselves. In terms of economic diversification, almost 50% of the economy is already non-oil. Foreign direct investment is coming up. Unemployment rates are coming down. Tourism is already 100 million per annum. Obviously, this includes a lot of domestic tourism, but the numbers are very, very encouraging. Infrastructure spending is up. House ownership has gone up. There are 2 very big government agencies, Roshan and NHC, which are driving this very successfully. Healthcare spending is up. And on renewable energy, 10% of Saudi Arabia's energy output already is coming from renewable energy. Saudi Arabia has announced a huge bucket of projects, more than 200 projects. All of them are giga projects by any stretch of the imagination. So about $2 to $3 trillion has been announced, but my understanding is this number will go up because these projects are actually being increased as they're being planned in terms of size, complexity, and so forth. So a huge swath of projects, and this is where I think Singapore companies can offer a lot of expertise. Most of the spending is going all over the kingdom, but Riyadh, the new city of Neom, Makkah and Medina, Jeddah, these are obviously the priority cities, and also Al Ula, which has got huge amount of tourism potential. Just a little bit about Meinhardt. Meinhardt is a design, project, and construction management firm. We've been operating in Saudi for a long time. We started out with a Japanese architect with whom we worked on One Raffles Place just nearby. And they took us to Saudi Arabia on King Saud University. And since then, we haven't looked back. We have been working throughout in Saudi Arabia. More recently, we worked on some very large Ministry of Interior projects, which forced us, or which necessitated that we move a lot of people from our Singapore office to Saudi to work with the Saudi contractors. We've also worked on the National Schools Program, kingdom-wide, so a lot of experience on completed projects. And then the stuff that we hear about in the newspapers, Times Square, and all of these places, the big billboards, we've got our fair share of projects across the kingdom working for Neom, Diriyah, Qadiyah, etc. So we're very proud of our increasing presence in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And we also did a map of projects across the Saudi Arabia where Meinhardt is working. So I've got 2 more slides, and I'm pressured to wrap up my presentation. I think there are opportunities for all Singapore-based companies, big or small. There's opportunity for everyone. Saudi Arabia is crying out for new expertise, for people to come in and provide their sort of value add, the experience, especially from Singapore, which is highly respected in Saudi Arabia. So pick your spot. Whether you want to go as a prime contract, you want to go in as providing your specialist services, there are opportunities for all from Singapore. And last but not least, every market has its own nuances, and Saudi Arabia is no different. But I think the key is, given the scale and breadth of opportunities in Saudi Arabia, one needs to be committed. You need to invest in having a presence in Saudi. It cannot be done through a remote control. And if you hunker down in Saudi Arabia, have the right strategy, identify the right projects, look at partnerships, I think there's a good chance that a lot of companies, especially from Singapore and ASEAN, can succeed there. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Atul and Omar. I think after listening to both your presentations, I'm like going through nostalgic memories. You mentioned the delegation in 2016. I was the one in Enterprise Singapore leading that delegation that you were in. And also the meetings that we used to have with King Abdullah Financial District. Yes, those were quite some nostalgic moments. So let me start the panel discussion by asking a few questions. Maybe I'll start with Atul. And before I throw in my first question, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate Global Schools for having their One World International Nanyang campus as the best IB school in Singapore. Yesterday they were awarded. Yeah, so congratulations on that. And I'm more proud because my daughter is going to that school. So that's a good job. Thanks. So maybe I'll start by asking you that how has Global Schools with the successful education model that you've had around the world, how has that been able to implement in the Middle East and specifically the cultural nuances in Saudi Arabia itself?
Thank you, Feroz. I think when we went to Middle East, somewhere around 2012, 2013, we had already rooted a lot of work in Asia, particularly East Asia. So we are now completing 18 years in Japan. And the amount of work we did to work with the community, to understand sensitivities, to be able to integrate their local Japanese culture, language, and aspects of fine arts and performing arts into the mainstream education actually went very well with the local community. We originally started a school for expatriates in Japan, in Tokyo. And but interestingly today, the school is a hot spot favorite for all the Japanese citizens. We have over 80% of our students are Japanese citizens. Even the ministries started working with us. We had the very unique opportunity to host the Japan's Crown Prince, Prince Akishino, in 2013. So we have been engaging on the government level, at the community level, on a very, very serious note. And we brought the same model of what we call as the best of Western education and the best of your culture. And we bring them together. It's a very unique formula that appeals to everyone, because no matter which country we go to, say Cambodia or UAE or Saudi, the fact that they find their own rich culture and heritage being reflected in the mainstream education of international schools is a very pleasing sight for all the parents and the communities. So the leaders take note, and we have been working in Middle East, for example, a program called Atasamu, which is a very nice blend of local culture of UAE and the STEM competitions. So when we brought the STEM competitions, as in science, maths, and technology competitions, into the mainstream schools, today the more than about 100 schools participate in those competitions because they find that there's a very nice blend of Arabic culture and also the science and technology. So these are some of the initiatives that we've done, and we continue to do so in Saudi as well. Interesting part is we started the school late, I think just about 22 September. We were given 2 months to start a school, and we just went on a war footing to do it. But today, I must say, I was there last weekend. As you know, we had a long weekend here, and I have to work during my long weekends. So I went to Riyadh all the way, straight to Riyadh, and spent 2 days, Saturday, Sunday there. And I was so pleased to find that the communities have taken our school so positively, because they are able to actually see benefits coming to their students as a way of the pedagogy changes that we have done, the cultural integration that we have done. And I'm very pleased to say that we very soon will be launching our second campus in the Riyadh city. So our experience has been very, very warm, very welcoming with all the communities. Today, for example, we are also working with the communities, of course, in Singapore, but in Japan, we are now talking to 4 provincial governments, because all of them are saying, please come and set up a school here. We're just setting up a new school in Tsukuba, which is the R&D city of Japan, which is an hour's drive from Tokyo, where you'll find all the world's R&D companies there. They're scaling up on their semiconductor research, on their IT research, and therefore, it's a natural place that governments would want us to be when they're increasing their communities on different levels. So overall, a very, very positive experience with Saudi Arabia.
That's really good to know, because it's not easy for a school to integrate with the community in such a short time. And I'm saying this as a parent who has lived in Saudi for 10 years, and my kids used to go to the British International School there. And it's quite challenging for both the schools as well as for the parents to find the right mix in terms of education and community as such. So that's really commendable. Thank you. So over to Omar. Meinhardt has been one of the earliest entrants into the Middle East, specifically in Saudi Arabia itself. And I'm sure that there are many challenges that you have faced. It certainly wasn't a smooth ride. And success comes to those who go through the tough times. So how did you overcome the challenges that you faced in the beginning?
That's true. You've been part of some of those journeys when I started out in Meinhardt and also in the Middle East. First of all, I'd like to say that Saudi Arabia has changed a lot over the last 10 odd years. For first thing, when I first started out in Saudi Arabia, the working week in Saudi was Thursday to Thursday. Thursday and Friday were the holidays, so basically Saturday was the first day of the working week. So one thing was that you would have to sacrifice your weekend inevitably, because obviously you need to be there on a Friday night so you can hit the ground running on Saturday. So that was the first challenge. The second was, of course, as I said, ease of doing business, especially for foreign companies, was not that, was quite tough. And at that point in time, it was not easy for 100% foreign-owned companies to do business in Saudi Arabia. The preferred route was that you would have a local partner. The local partner could have a significant stake in the local SPV. So, and if you didn't have that, then, in terms of local footing, relationships, etc., you would always be on the back foot. Now, all those challenges have changed. Now, Saudi Arabia, for one thing, Thursday is a working day. And, so it's more aligned with the rest of the GCC. Secondly, in Saudi Arabia, you find a lot of young people now who have been trained in the best universities, either locally or abroad, now taking helm at very powerful positions. So for foreign companies working in Saudi Arabia, the interaction, the quality of discussions is very different. They're very bold. They also, like Singapore government agencies, have very sort of steep targets. So it's in their interest to work with you and facilitate you. And the Ministry of Investment is a case in point. Very, very supportive agency, and they've helped us a lot in our journey in Saudi Arabia. So these were some of the challenges we faced. Obviously now the market is very hot. So if you have something to offer, you have a good chance. But I'll just say at the end that Saudi Arabia is an open market. There are companies there, especially from the West, who have been there for many, many years, for decades before even many of the Asian companies came in. You've also now got Chinese companies, other Asian companies going there in a big way. So it's an open play field, but there are opportunities for all. It's a big pie over there.
Thank you so much. We are pressed for time, so I'm just going to ask a couple of questions so we can keep it short. So while I'm with you, Omar, what would be an aha moment that you found in Saudi Arabia where you felt that this is quite strikingly unexpected or pleasantly surprising?
I think when you have a vision like what Saudi Arabia is pushing through, you always have the question at the back of your mind whether this is being embraced. And I'm sure a lot of you have this question whether this is being embraced by the wider public or not. In my case, and I've seen this not just once, it happens to me every visit I make, it's amazing how much buy-in there is for the modernization, opening up of Saudi Arabia. It's just incredible. I remember, and I think I mentioned this to you previously, I was heading back after wrapping up my trip on a Friday morning. I was going back to Singapore, and from Riyadh, there are no direct flights, so I had to go via Dubai. So the guy who was checking me in at the airport counter said, and he thought I was one of those expats who goes back to Dubai for the weekend. And he said, in Saudi Arabia, we have so many things to do. We have concerts, we have shows. basically saying, why are you going back to Dubai? And, you know, in a couple of years, you know, everybody will come to Saudi Arabia. And you know, I, of course, told them I was actually going to Dubai only as a transit en route to Singapore. But, you know, it gave me the sense that there's huge amount of pride and passion about the changes that are happening. And, you know, the other aspect is you see people who have left very senior jobs in MNCs abroad coming back to their kingdom and working for the government in particular. And I think that just shows you that there's huge amount of energy and positivity about the changes that are happening in Saudi.
Right, thank you. Just one very quick question to Atul. While global schools has been successful in the Middle East and around the world, how do you see the opportunities for the other education sector within Singapore or ASEAN to enter into the Middle East, specifically Saudi?
So I would put, and before that I must tell, you didn't ask me the question of the aha moment. You know, when we went to Riyadh and we met the officials and we came back, and then they said, when we applied for the formal trade license, we actually got it in 4 hours. By the time my colleague left the office and reached his hotel, he got an SMS on his phone saying your trade license is approved. Well, that's amazing efficiency. So congratulations to all the Saudi embassy and all the Saudi officials here. In terms of you know, how we have seen the opportunities, I think Saudi today, and particularly Riyadh, is in the same phase where I would say Dubai was a few years back. They're putting in all the frameworks, they're putting in all the ways to attract more international schools. The best part is, you know, in many parts of Middle East, you may be dealing with a lot of expats, but in Saudi, it is actually dealing with most of the Saudi nationals. So, you know, that to us is a very sticky form of revenue, where you have more nationals and local citizens coming into the schools. But I think our schools are designed for all of them. And I would say that, you know, any other educators who are interested in creating high learning institutes and universities and schools, I know somebody I met yesterday, he just flew to Riyadh this last night because the ministries are now revising their frameworks on attracting all the international schools and universities into parts of Saudi Arabia. So it's a very right moment to get in.
Well, thank you so much, and that concludes the panel because of the time. Thank you so much, Omar and Atul, for your time. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for these inputs, gentlemen, and I ask that you remain at the center of the stage so that you can receive a token of appreciation by Mr. Sunil and Ms. Nomita and also for a brief photo.